Hey out there, you Ruby guys. I am Gooby D, and today we're going to be discussing a bit about hashes, arrays, and we're going to be touching also a little bit on regular expressions. These are a couple of things that have been requested a number of times, and so I just wanted to go through and show you a little bit about those. So first off, let me also just go ahead and mention, if you guys haven't already seen, I have released my latest version of the GTBS engine, and it supports lots of different types of battle, but one of the most recent, and so on, I've shown this briefly before, is the MGC Lay Meta Editor. And so I'm currently working on a demo to put together for you guys here so you guys can see that. But yeah, so this is what it's currently at, but I am building it more as we continue going on, getting Holder to actually do us some custom images, isometric sprites, and animated battlers. So that will be very cool when it comes to fruition. Anyways, so let's go ahead and kill this, and we will get back into identifying and working with hashes, arrays, and so on. Now, one of the things you will know is in GTBS and in many other scripts, arrays and hashes are used quite commonly. And regular expressions became extremely popular, at least in the RPG Maker series, in RPG Maker VX. Now, the biggest reason as to why is because they give you the ability to parse a note and get information out of it to be able to configure your scripts and so on. So that is why it became so big. So let's go ahead and discuss a little bit about arrays and things you can do with them. So what is an array? Let's start with that. So let's go ahead. We're going to just insert a new script here. And let's go ahead and discuss what can be in an array. Better yet, actually, let's look at some of the items that are already in an array. Now, for those of you that already do know programming, I know many of you guys probably don't, but in any case, arrays in Ruby are basically the exact same thing as list in C# and WPF programming languages. I believe you can also do list in Java, and there's a couple others out there, but basically it is a container that holds a series of items. Now, in Ruby, there is no context of what that item is, so it's kind of like a list of just generic objects. And then as you pull them out, you can see what they are. Now, if we come in here and we actually look at, say, the game Party, the game, well, actually, we probably need to look at game unit. Okay, so right here we can see members, and it returns an empty string, or I'm sorry, not an empty string, an empty array. You can tell things that return arrays because they're wrapped in brackets. You've probably seen this in other things such as like a bunch of strings. Maybe you've got a series of menu command options or something along those lines that you wanted to put into an array so that it's easier to access and you don't have to call everything by its own individual name. And so that's one of the advantages. The second usage is this right here. You've got this members.select, and then you can select only the members that are alive, or in other words, a qualifying criteria of that object. So let's go ahead and come back down here, and let's create a new array, or let's create a new class here. Let's go ahead and call this my mouse, right? So this mouse is going to have a, let's go ahead and make it a attribute reader, and it is going to have the ability of, or I'm sorry, not ability, we're going to ask it how many legs it has, and then we're also going to ask it its name, okay? So this mouse is going to have those exposed functions so that you can read from them from the outside. And then we're going to go ahead and define an initialize method, which is going to pass in the name and the amount of legs. Now, if you don't supply the amount of legs, it's going to default to 4. Okay, and so we're just going to go ahead and close that up. And now what we need to do is save these incoming local variables as instance variables so that they stay persistent with this edition or this version of the mouse. So we say name equals name, and then legs equals legs. Okay, so now what we can do is we can create a whole bunch of mice. So let's go ahead and create a mice array like this. And then let's go ahead and say, let's add a bunch of these mouse. Let's add each mouse to the group of mice. So let's go ahead and we're going to say mice, and we're going to add to it a mouse dot new with the name of empty, and he's got 3 legs. Poor mouse, right? Okay, we're going to add one more here. And so another way you can do the add to an array is dot, wow, it's been way too long since I've done this. I always use the inner, I think it's push. All right, and so then you put new, and then this guy is going to be pushy, and he's going to have 4 legs. All right, and then we're going to add one more, and we'll just add this one through this method again. And we'll say mouse.new. Oops, and don't forget your extra bracket on that guy, since you have the opening one for the push, and then you have the one for the new. So you have to close new and then close the push. Okay, and then this guy is going to have a name of Bob. Good old Bob the mouse, and he's going to be our freak, and he's going to have 5 legs. Okay, so now if we go ahead and we say to print out the mice object, then what we'll see is we'll see an array with 3 mice in it. So let's go ahead and just quickly run this script, and in our console we should see that. Okay, and so over here in the top left-hand corner, you can see we've got our mouse, name, empty, we've got 3 legs, we've got pushy with 4 legs, and we've got Bob with 5 legs. So, let's go ahead and kill that. Let me actually go into the system here and turn down the sound, or just turn off that title screen music. Like that. Okay. So anyways, so that is some of the basic uses of arrays, how to declare an array and how to fill it with objects. So how do we start asking for objects within that? Okay, so there's a couple of ways. One is you can actually use just brackets, and then you specify an index location. So in this case, 0 is going to be equal to the mouse empty, because he is the first person in that. Now keep in mind that arrays use a 0 index. A 0 index is basically that rather than starting at 1, it starts at 0. Okay, so if mouse 0 is empty, then mouse 2 is mouse Bob. Okay, so what we can do is we can actually come up here and we can make each one of these guys equal to their own version up here. And then that's going to push in empty, and then here we're going to have pushy, and he is going to be equal to that, and then we can add him to the array there, and then we're going to have Bob, and he is going to be equal to this mouse here, and then we're going to add him to the array. Okay, so now what you can do is you can actually ask for people within that. So you could say you actually have something to compare it to now, actually. That's what I was trying to do with that, so that you would be able to see that you can compare your mice. So if you say mice 0 is equal to empty, which is our first mouse that we added to it, then we're going to go ahead and print it is. Okay, and then you have to close your if, or if you want to, you can also put it this way, like that, to say it is. And then the script will stop and launch the game normally. So if we go ahead and show that, we can see it is, because the very first mouse is that. So if we come in here and we actually do it is not if mouse 1 is equal to empty. Now this is saying that pushy is actually empty. Now the reason I do this is because we're just comparing the index of the array to that. So we're saying if, and in this case here we're long of short saying pushy is equal to empty, which is our class, our local variable here of our class mouse, and then it just does that comparison, and then when it's done with the comparison it prints the result, depending on whether or not it's true or false. So in this case it's going to give me an error message because I typed it wrong. Nice. Okay, and so, and then in this case here, we actually want to do not equal to empty. Okay, go ahead and play test that. And there you can see the first one was and the second one isn't. So now, how do we get into the more tricky stuff? Okay, so maybe what we want is we want a list of all the mice that have more than 4 legs, or I'm sorry, equal to 4 or greater legs. So what we can do is we can say mice.select, and then you do a open curly bracket, and then you go ahead and, oh, excuse me for just 1 second while I answer my phone. See if I can even pause this. Whatever, it can wait for a minute. Anyway, so we have mice.select, and then what we're going to do is go ahead and decide our examination mouse name. So in this case here, I'm just going to use M as short for mouse, and then what you're going to do is put a vertical bar, and that's saying define each mouse as M, okay? And then the next part is to say m dot legs greater than 3, okay? So we're saying if this mouse has greater than 3 legs, then to select them and return that list. So here, if we print this list of results, we will see that there are 2 mice in that list, which should be our Pushy and Bob mice. So here we've got our first mouse with the name of Pushy, and here is our name of Bob, who has 4 and 3 and 5 legs. Okay? So you can use this to select, say, actors. Okay, so say for example, we want to get a list of actors who have, less than 200 HP. You can actually say game party dot members. Now, if you're in battle, it will only return your battle members, but then you can do dot select, and then you do the brackets, and then the vertical bar, and then you identify your person or your variable that's going to be used. In this case, it's a variable of members, so the members are actors, so we use the word actor. Another vertical bar, and then you could say actor.hp is less than 200. And that will return a list of actors who have an HP of less than 200. And that's basically it. That is one of the biggest powers of arrays. It makes them absolutely awesome. And if you guys look at my battle system for the GTBS or GoobyD's tactical battle system, you will notice that I use arrays everywhere. And so because I like them ever so. All right, so the next thing we're going to go over is a couple of techniques to trim out our people. And then in this, I am going to add 2 arrays of mice together. So in here, we've got those mice, and then we've got, we're going to create a new variable here called mice2. Okay, mice2 is going to be equal to a array, and within this array we're going to go ahead and declare one mouse, and he is going to be Talon, just cause. And then we close the brackets on that, and he is the first person inside of that. We can go ahead and actually define a second one here, mouse.new, and we're going to call this one Yodi, Yodeler, or something. All right, so we've got two arrays of mice. So what we can do now is we can now go ahead and ask to add those two arrays together. So if we say mice plus mice2, then we print that out. It will print out a list of all of our mice, including Yodeler, Talon, Bob, etc. So what if a person exists in both, and you only want to get the person who exists in both of these arrays? So what we can do is we can go ahead and add, let's go ahead and add Bob to this, right? So let's go ahead and add Bob to that array. So the next thing to do is, if you want to see only the objects that exist, the same object that exist in both arrays, then you can do this nifty trick. It is, let's see, you do mice, and then you do end equals, and then mice2. Okay? And what that is going to do is going to be those who are the same. And in that case, you see it only outputs Bob because he was the only one that was contained in both arrays. You can also do that just to get the result. So in this case here, we're actually saying set mice equal to only those who are in both. But maybe you don't want to actually get rid of this variable. So what you do is you say my mice, or whatever you want to call it, right? My mice equals, and then you do mice and mice2. And what that will do is give you only the result back of those who match and are contained in both arrays. Same case, we get the same result. Now there's other cool little things you can do as well. There is the or equal, which is you do the pipe and then the equal. So instead of getting the ones that are in both arrays, it gets the unique ones in both arrays. So if maybe Bob was listed in there 4 times and you didn't want to see that, what you really wanted was to get only the unique mice. And in that case, you would use or equals. Or equal can actually be used for a lot of other things as well. Say, for example, you've got a variable, say can move, right? So say, for example, can move is not initialized, so it's equal to nil, right? Well, if it's never been defined, it's always nil. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if can move is equal to nil, so we're going to say movement equals, and then we're going to say can move, we're going to actually set that to can move, right? And then what we're going to say is movement or equals true. Okay? So what that means is that says if movement is equal to nil and you run this statement, then it's saying if it's nil, then set it equal to true. That's kind of briefly what it's trying to say. I mean, another way to write that same statement would be to go ahead and let's go ahead and I didn't really need the can move. Another way to put that would be like this. You'd say movement equals movement dot nil, and then that would be equal to, or better yet, actually, true if movement dot nil. Okay, so basically you're saying set the movement to true if the movement variable is nil. Now, which one is easier to type? Obviously, there's advantages to one or the other. And so you can play with those and do what you want. Now, maybe, for example, you don't want it to be equal to true or false. Maybe you want it to be equal to a number. So we can say movement equals, and then we can actually ask movement if it's equal to nil. So we say dot nil, and then we put a question mark after it with a space in between. Now what this says is if it's nil, then equal true, or in this case, let's say if it's equal to true, then return 10, otherwise set it equal to 0. So what this is trying to say is that if the movement variable is nil, then return 10 because it's true, and if it's false, then return 0. So here we can go ahead and we'll just print that out. And let's see, so it's not equal to nil because we did this stuff, so let's go ahead and remove that real quick. And let's run that. And what you're going to see is that it's going to return 10. The reason is because you're asking it if it's nil, and in fact it is nil, so it's printing out 10, as you can see right here. And then likewise, if it's not equal to nil, so we go ahead and put it equal to true or whatever else we want, when we run that again, it will be equal to 0, as you can see there, because again, the condition was that if it's nil, then return that, otherwise then return this. Okay, so let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. Let's go ahead and we're going to discuss a little bit about hashes now. Hashes are almost equally awesome as are arrays. However, hashes are not quite as fast. So you want to try to not use them for speed-intensive reasons, but there's still quite a bit to be gathered out of it. So a hash, for those of you familiar with C# programming, is equivalent to a dictionary. However, a hash can have any key, and so initially in a well, and I guess even in a dictionary, you have to define that it's going to be equal to a string, and then that string is going to return a result or whatever that result is. So you would say dictionary, and then you would specify the type of the key and then the type of the result. Well, again, in Ruby, you don't have to worry about typing, so you just ignore that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a couple of these mice into a hash. So let me go ahead and just go ahead and define a hash. We're going to call this hash, how about hash, right? Okay, and we're going to go ahead and declare that. Now, with a hash, you declare it with curly brackets. Okay, so now we can say hash, and then you do brackets, and then we can say, so you can treat it very much like an array, and you can actually put in a number or an index to where you want it to be, and then you can make it equal to something. So in the case up above, we're going to go ahead and assign empty to this, and then you could assign the next guy is equal to pushy, and so on, right? So you can just repeat that pattern. However, it also has the ability to return a little bit more or even a little bit less information. You can also define a hash in another way where you actually define everything inside of it. So we can go ahead and put 0 equals and then a arrow, and then we go ahead and say empty, and then you put a comma, 1 arrow, and then that's going to be equal to pushy. Those two hashes, in this case here, hash 1 and hash 2, are actually exactly equal to each other, because in this case we just define the hash and then we set the values individually, or in this case we define the hash and as we define it we declare what's inside of it. So you can still do a lot of different things with that, but now we can do a lot of cool things. And you guys have may or may not have noticed this, but inside of GTBS I declare a hash called Windows. Okay, and then inside of that I will declare say a help window by doing that, and then I'm going to make that equal to a object. In this case I'd say window help, right? So what we can do then is we can ask that array for information. So in the case of windows, we can return a list of windows, but we can even ask what windows are available, right? So we can say windows, and then we can say values, and then we can select on those. So actually, let me explain values to you. Let me use the mice example for explaining that. So if we have a hash and we ask for .values, what that will return is these objects of empty and pushy. It doesn't return their indexes. It just returns the objects that is contained within that dictionary. If you don't want to use a value, you can also ask for keys. So all you get is the indexes of the keys of the objects inside. So in this case here, we can say for each of the key types, so in this case here, we could put Windows Bob is equal to, and we can actually make him not be a window at all. We can actually just make him equal to the mouse Bob. And then we can actually make another one. And this time we're going to actually use a number. So we're just going to say 5 is equal to pushy. Okay. Now if we print that out, and we just print at Windows, and actually I'm just going to replace that so it's not a global or a instance variable. So I'm just going to say I want to replace that with Windows. And how I got this window is you hold down Control and hit H, and it'll bring this up. And so it finds each edition of it. And so I'm just going to replace each of those. Okay. So we can go ahead and print out our windows. And then we can go ahead and print out our windows.values, and then we'll do an additional one of windows.keys. And you can see the different output types for each type of request. And window tone equals nil. It's probably because I'm trying to initialize the help window and it doesn't like that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get rid of this help window, and we're going to actually make him equal to a new mouse, which is named help. And so help, like that. And he's going to have 4 legs. All right, so let's go ahead and print that out. Okay, so our first printout up here is our whole hash. So it says our first object with a key of help is equal to a mouse with the name of help. The second key, Bob, is equal to a mouse named Bob. And then the last one, with a key of 5, is equal to a mouse named Pushy. Okay. Our next line here is just our values. So it returns an array of objects that were the values within that hash. So we can see each of the mice. Then finally, we did .keys. Now keys returns a list of the keys to access the objects within it. So then we can say help Bob and the number 5. So that is how those work. Now those things, like for example, I use hashes usually when dealing with skills when I'm trying to gather information about skills from the database. And the reason I do that is because, for example, an array, so let's go ahead and take our mice example. An array can only have things added to it, and it assumes the next value or the next index. So if I'm trying to add skill number 75, and it's going to be equal to some new variable, which is actually just a string, and I'm going to say equals awesome, right? So maybe we're giving them new descriptions or something along those lines. So what we'd normally do is we'd ask data skills for that skill number, and it is going to be equal to awesome. Now what that would do is that would destroy the skill 75 out of your database and make it equal to a string rather than a skill object. But what this allows us to do is say, for example, we're going to put this inside of a hash, right? So we're going to go ahead and add this to our Windows hash. And so now we can keep skill number 75 or key number 75, and it's equal to a particular value. Versus if you were going to add it to an array, it would just assume whatever's next. So if you found skills 1, 2, 3, 7, and 9, then you added something else to it, it's going to take the next index. What is the index? We got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the index is going to be 5 for whatever comes next, right? So if we asked that index for that array for index 5, then it is going to print out 10 because that is the value of index 5 within that array. So I don't know, there's a lot of different things you can do, but if you tried to just add 75 to this list, then it would just be an ID in the list. And so unless you wanted it to be equal to something, it's hard to make that association. So it can be troublesome. So anyways, I think that is more than enough topic to cover in this, and I've probably gone over my minutes. But in any case, I'm going to leave you with that, and that's just a little bit about arrays and hashes, how to play with them, how to do a lot of that. Now, you can come in here and play with this stuff however you want. I just created a couple of these things just off the cuff. The next thing we're going to be covering is regular expressions. So again, how I mentioned that is that we're scanning notes. And so I will teach you guys how to scan notes and how to store information about those notes and what we're doing. And again, you can see examples of this inside of GTBS and or really pretty much any script. So I'm going to actually just keep that there, and I will make this available for download if anyone, well, I mean really, yeah, I'll make it available for download just because for those of you who want to just see the script and not have to follow me along the whole time, then you can do that. So anyways, I will go ahead and get this wrapped up and uploaded for you guys. And then what I'd like you guys to do is go ahead and make some suggestions for me down below as to what you would like me to do our next tutorial on. So I will go ahead and get this uploaded, finish that. Please go ahead, rate and subscribe and like, and I will continue making videos for you. Okay, that's it, guys. Thank you very much. Bye.